The smell of antiseptic always makes me gag now. That and the relentless rhythmic beep of the machines they had me hooked up to. My side throbbed, a deep, insistent ache that no amount of morphine seemed to dull completely. But every time I winced, I'd tell myself, "It's worth it. Caitlin will live." My name is Hope, by the way, and I guess for a while there, I really lived up to it. Just 3 weeks ago, I was on a stage, lights blazing, music thumping through my bones. Dance wasn't just something I did, it was who I was. Years of training, auditions, near misses, and then finally the call, a spot in a touring contemporary dance company, my dream. I'd floated through those first few rehearsals, every muscle singing, every leap feeling like flight. Then came Mom's frantic call. "It's Caitlin," she'd sobbed into the phone, her voice cracking. "Her kidneys, they're failing, Hope. The doctors, they don't think she has long." Caitlin, my little sister, always a bit dramatic, always craving the spotlight, but still, my sister. The tests were a blur, rushed and urgent. Turns out I was a perfect match. The doctors explained the risks, the recovery, the lifelong implications. Dr. Ramirez sat with me, her expression serious. "You understand that this is a major surgery, Hope. Your career as a professional dancer, it will be significantly impacted, if not over." "She's my sister," I'd said, my voice surprisingly steady. And to me that explained everything. What was a career, even a dream career I'd bled for, compared to Caitlin's life? So I traded my point shoes for a hospital gown, my stage for a sterile room with pale green walls. "You're a hero, Hope. A true hero," Mom, Greta, kept saying, her voice thick with emotion she could summon on demand. She'd dab at her eyes with a tissue that never seemed to get truly wet, her gaze flicking towards any nurse or doctor who passed by. Dad, Tom, would just nod, his hand on my shoulder, a little too firm, his expression a practiced mask of solemn concern. Our brave girl. Caitlin, in her own room down the hall, was already leveraging the situation. Her Instagram feed was a carefully curated stream of suffering and stoicism. Caitlin's kidney journey, such a sisterly sacrifice, a brave warrior. They'd even started a GoFundMe to cover Caitlin's mounting medical expenses and ongoing care. It had raised thousands, then tens of thousands in days. People were so generous, so quick to open their hearts and wallets. Local news did a small piece, a human interest story. "Selfless sister saves sibling," the headline read. They interviewed Mom and Dad, who spoke with tear-filled eyes about Caitlin's courage and my unbelievable, selfless sacrifice. I cringed when I saw the clip on the hospital TV, but they seemed to bask in the glow of the local spotlight. My recovery was hell, pure, unadulterated hell. The pain was a constant gnawing beast. Simple things like trying to sit up or shuffling to the bathroom felt like climbing Everest. The incision on my abdomen was a livid, angry red line, a permanent reminder. My own medical bills were starting to arrive at our home address. Thick, intimidating envelopes I'd seen Mom quickly push into a drawer. They hadn't mentioned my aftercare expenses in the GoFundMe plea, but Caitlin was getting better. That was the main thing, I kept telling myself. She'd get to live, to have a future. That had to be worth it. A week after the surgery, I was finally allowed to shuffle down the hall, leaning heavily on a walker to see her. She was propped up in bed, surrounded by a mountain of flowers and balloons, scrolling through her phone, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Hopi," she chirped, looking up, her eyes bright. "You look rough." A laugh almost escaped me. "You look better," I managed, sinking into the visitor's chair, already exhausted by the short journey. "The doctors said I'm responding amazingly to your kidney," she said, preening a little as she fluffed her hair. "They're talking about a miraculous recovery photo shoot for the GoFundMe update. Isn't that great? More content. Yeah, I said, trying to dredge up some enthusiasm from the depths of my fatigue. Great. A few days later, I was back in my own room, drifting in and out of a restless, painkiller-induced sleep. The door was slightly ajar, maybe an inch. I could hear their voices from the small family waiting area just outside. Mom, Dad, and Caitlin, who must have been feeling well enough for a wheelchair excursion. Another 5,000 just came in this morning from the GoFundMe, Mum was saying, her voice crisp and businesslike, utterly devoid of the tearful tremor she used for the public. Incredible, Dad chuckled, a low, pleased sound. People are so gullible, it's almost too easy. Gullible, my heart gave a weird, painful thud against my ribs. Then Caitlin's voice, bright and clear, laced with something that sounded like triumph. Seriously, that whole dying sister act, Oscar-worthy if I do say so myself. And Hope, bless her naive heart, she bought the whole thing hook, line and sinker. Poor, selfless Hope, giving up her precious dancing career for little old me. A wave of laughter, sharp and cruel, followed. Mum's high-pitched, almost girlish giggle, Dad's rumbling laugh, Caitlin's triumphant, slightly manic cackle. The miraculous recovery photo shoot next week is going to be epic, Mum said, her voice regaining its strategic edge. We need to keep the momentum going. Maybe a tearful thank you from Caitlin directly to the camera. Really milk it. Oh, I can definitely cry on cue, Caitlin said, her voice dripping with smugness. Especially when I think about that new convertible I'm getting with my share of the donations. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't breathe. The rhythmic beeping of my heart monitor seemed to grow louder, faster, echoing the sudden, frantic, sickening pounding in my chest. It wasn't the physical pain in my side anymore. It was a new, different agony, a cold, sharp thing twisting in my gut, stealing the air from my lungs, making me feel like I was drowning. Their laughter, their casual, monstrous words replayed in my mind on a loop. She bought the whole thing. The sound of it, the sheer, unadulterated betrayal, chilled me to the absolute bone. My world, the one where I was a hero saving my sister, didn't just shatter. It imploded, leaving nothing but a cold, dark void. My hand, trembling almost uncontrollably, fumbled for my phone on the bedside table. The screen was cracked, just like my life. With a surge of adrenaline that momentarily eclipsed the pain in my side, I managed to unlock it, my thumb swiping clumsily. Voice recorder. I pressed the red button. Please, God, let this work. I slid the phone back, angling it slightly towards the partially open door, praying they wouldn't come in, praying the microphone was good enough. Their voices continued, oblivious. And the beauty of it is, those faked hospital letters Dr. Peterson's dodgy cousin cooked up. Untraceable, Dad said, and I could almost hear the smirk in his voice. Cost a bit, but worth every penny for authenticity. Authenticity, Mum scoffed lightly. The only authentic thing here is the money rolling in. We should look into that little cottage by the lake once this all blows over. A reward for our excellent performance, Caitlin giggled. And I need a whole new wardrobe for my new Lease on Life debut. All those interviews I'll be doing, gotta look the part of the brave survivor. My stomach churned. My kidney, my life-altering sacrifice, was paving the way for a lake cottage and a shopping spree. The sheer, unadulterated callousness of it was a physical blow. They discussed my lost career as if it were a minor inconvenience, a small price for their gain. It's a shame about Hope's dancing, of course, Mum said, her voice dripping with false sympathy that now sounded like acid in my ears. But she'll find something else. Maybe a nice, quiet desk job. Much more suitable, really, less strenuous. And honestly, Caitlin added, her voice conspiratorial, was she really going to make it big? Let's be real. This way she actually gets to be a hero, in her own mind, anyway. Their laughter echoed again, and this time I didn't just feel chilled. I felt a cold, hard knot forming in my chest, something dense and unyielding. The ice in my veins wasn't just shock anymore, it was crystallizing into a diamond-hard rage. I lay there, feigning sleep. For what felt like an eternity, the recording app silently capturing their poison. Every word was a fresh stab. Finally, their voices faded as they moved further away. I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my whole body vibrating. Carefully, I reached for my phone, stopped the recording, and saved it, my most precious, terrible possession. The next few days were a masterclass in deception, on my part. I smiled weakly when they visited, accepted their hollow words of praise, their feigned concern. "You're looking a little better today, sweetie," Mum would say, patting my hand, her touch making my skin crawl. "Just focusing on getting strong again," I'd murmur, keeping my eyes downcast, pretending it was from weakness, not from the effort of masking the fury that threatened to boil over. Caitlin would flit in, full of her own progress. "They're taking my stitches out tomorrow, and guess what? That influencer, Andres Wallace, wants to do a follow-up piece on my miracle recovery." "That's great, Caitlin," I'd say, my voice carefully neutral. Each word they spoke, every gesture of affection was a grotesque parody. The loving family I thought I had? They were monsters wearing familiar faces. I watched them, really watched them, for the first time. The subtle glances between Mom and Dad, the way Caitlin's eyes gleamed with avarice when she talked about the GoFundMe. It was all there, a hideous tableau I'd been too blind, too trusting to see. The nurses, at least, were genuinely kind. "You're very brave," one of them, Sarah, said gently as she changed my dressing. "Your sister is very lucky." "Yes," I said, the word tasting like ash. "She is." I focused on the small victories, sitting up without wincing, taking a few more steps each day. But beneath the surface of my quiet recovery, a plan was beginning to whisper, a dark seed planted by their betrayal. The recording on my phone was the soil, and my rage was the water. One evening, alone in my room, the only light coming from the city, glow beyond my window, I opened Caitlin's Instagram. Her latest post, a picture of her looking pale but beatific, a single tear artfully tracing a path down her cheek. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "Feeling so much gratitude for my amazing sister Hope and for all of your incredible support. We're almost at our goal for my ongoing care. Every little bit helps me on this long road to recovery. Link in bio. Hux blessed Scout Kidney Warrior. Road to recovery. Thank you." The GoFundMe page. Still active, still soliciting money for a lie, and a recovery update video. They were going to milk this for every last drop. A cold certainty settled over me. I couldn't let them get away with this. Not after what they'd done to me, to all those generous people who donated. I didn't know how. Not yet. But the question wasn't if. I would do something. It was what and when. The ice in my veins wasn't just anger anymore. It was purpose. Coming home was like stepping onto a stage set for a play I no longer wanted to be in. The house felt different, tainted. Every family photo, every shared memory was now overlaid with the sickening filter of their deceit. My recovery was slow, the pain a dull, constant companion, but it was the isolation that gnawed at me. They were careful around me, too solicitous, their concern feeling like a suffocating blanket. "Need anything, sweetie?" Mom would ask, her voice oozing a sweetness that made my teeth ache. "A cup of tea? Your pillow's fluffed?" "I'm fine, Mom," I'd reply, keeping my tone even, my eyes averted. I spent most of my time in my room, the door closed, a fortress against their false affection. When they were out, Mom at her charity lunches, Dad at the golf course, networking, Caitlin on yet another shopping spree for her recovery wardrobe. I began to dig. My laptop became my weapon. I sifted through old emails, searching for keywords. Doctor, illness, money. I found threads between Mom and Dad discussing Caitlin's episodes years ago. Fainting spells that coincided with exams she hadn't studied for. Mysterious allergies that flared up just before family events she wanted to avoid. Small manipulations, attention-seeking tactics, but nothing on this scale. This kidney scheme was their magnum opus of deceit. One afternoon, while they were all out celebrating Caitlin's latest positive checkup with a lavish lunch, I ventured into Dad's study. My heart hammered against my ribs. His desk was usually a mess, but I found a folder tucked away in a bottom drawer labelled Caitlin Medical. Inside, printouts. Not the faked letters Dad had mentioned. He was too smart to leave those lying around. But older documents. Bills for specialists. Notes from doctors about symptoms with no clear organic cause. Suggestions for psychological evaluation that were clearly never followed up on. And then a more recent, hastily scribbled notepad page. A list. Kidney, most sympathy. Liver, too complex. Heart, too risky. Underneath, hope, perfect match. Won't refuse. They chose this. They specifically chose a kidney donation because it was dramatic, because it would tug at heartstrings, and because they knew me. They knew my love for Caitlin, my inherent need to help, would make me the perfect, unquestioning donor. They hadn't just stumbled into this. They'd engineered it, with me as the primary disposable component. The medical bills for my own aftercare were piling up on the kitchen counter, addressed to me. Mum would glance at them, then pointedly look away. "Oh, those. We'll sort them out later, dear. Caitlin's needs come first right now, you understand." Not a single cent from the tens of thousands they'd grifted had been allocated to the person who'd actually sacrificed a part of her body. My best friend Ezra called. "Hey, stranger, heard you were back home. Can I swing by, bring crappy takeout and even crappier jokes?" His familiar, easygoing voice was a lifeline. "Please," I said, the word catching in my throat. When he saw me, his smile faltered. "Whoa, Hope, you okay?" I wasn't, and the dam finally broke. The carefully constructed walls I'd built around my emotions crumbled. The story spilled out, punctuated by tears I couldn't stop. Tears of rage, of grief, of utter, soul-crushing betrayal. He listened, his expression shifting from concern to disbelief, then to a quiet, simmering fury that mirrored my own. "What?" he kept saying, his voice low and dangerous. I didn't just tell him, I played him the recording. He sat there, phone pressed to his ear, his face paling as their laughter, their casual cruelty filled my small bedroom. When it finished, he was silent for a long moment, his jaw tight. Those absolute bastards, he finally breathed, his eyes blazing. "Hope, I don't even know what to say. That's monstrous." "I know," I whispered, wiping my eyes, "and I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do," Ezra said, his voice firm. "We do. We expose them. We burn their whole charade to the ground." He looked at me, his gaze unwavering. "I'm in. Whatever you need. Tech stuff, planning, moral support, alibis, you name it." A tiny spark of warmth ignited in the icy wasteland of my heart. I wasn't entirely alone. A few days later, Mum was on the phone in the living room, her voice animated. I paused outside the door, listening. "Yes, of course, everyone who donated will be invited, and Andres Wallace from Channel 7 News has already confirmed he'll be there with a camera crew. It's going to be a wonderful thank you and celebration of Caitlin's miraculous recovery party, a real testament to the power of community and family." My breath caught. A party, a public celebration, with media. The perfect stage, I realised, a grim smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. The perfect public stage for their downfall. The party planning kicked into high gear immediately. Our house, which already felt like a meticulously curated stage set, became even more so. Mum was a whirlwind of activity, barking orders into her phone at caterers, florists and rental companies. Yes, the grand marquee for the garden, obviously, and I want fairy lights. Thousands of them. It needs to look magical, celebratory. The guest list, she announced proudly at dinner one night, was nearing 200. All the major donors, of course, some local business owners who've been so supportive, and Andres Wallace is bringing a +1, his producer apparently, maximum exposure. Caitlin, meanwhile, was living her best fraudulent life. Her Instagram was a daily diary of her inspiring recovery. Selfies in new outfits captioned, "Feeling stronger every day, a road to her recovery blessed." Videos of her taking tentative steps in the garden, always with perfect lighting and a wistful expression, and endless thank yous to her amazing supporters. She even did a live Q&A talking about her new lease on life and how she planned to use her experience to inspire others. The hypocrisy was so blatant, so sickening, it made my head spin. "You should do a little speech too, Hope," Mum suggested one afternoon, not looking up from her seating chart. "Just a few words about how proud you are of Caitlin, how happy you are that your sacrifice paid off." "I'll think about it," I said, my voice carefully neutral. Oh, I was thinking about it, all right. Dad was the outlier in this festival of deceit. He seemed quieter, more subdued. He'd hover near me sometimes, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. You feeling all right, Hope?" he asked one evening, as I was meticulously doing my physio exercises in the living room, the dull ache in my side a constant reminder. "Peachy," I replied, not meeting his gaze, focusing on the stretch. Good. He lingered for a moment longer, then shuffled off. Was it guilt? A flicker of conscience, or just another layer of their elaborate performance, designed to lull me into a false sense of security? I couldn't tell. And frankly, I didn't care. He was complicit. He'd laughed with them. That was all that mattered. Ezra became my covert operations partner. He came over under the guise of cheering me up, and we'd huddle in my room, voices low, planning. "Okay, so the faked medical reports," he said one afternoon, tapping his pen against a notepad. "You said your dad mentioned Dr. Peterson's cousin?" "Yeah, but I haven't found anything concrete with that name. Dad's too careful to leave the actual fakes lying around." "We need something tangible," Ezra mused. A few days later, luck, or perhaps karma, intervened. I was taking out the recycling when I noticed a crumpled piece of paper at the bottom of Dad's office bin, partially obscured by junk mail. My heart rate picked up. Smoothing it out, I saw it was a printout, a draft of one of Caitlin's symptom lists for a specialist visit that never actually happened, full of exaggerated claims. At the bottom in Dad's handwriting was a scribbled note, "Cross-ref with Peterson's final version, ensure consistency for GoFundMe narrative." "Ezra, look at this," I said, showing him the paper when he next visited. His eyes lit up. "This is good. It's not the faked report itself, but it's a direct link to them crafting the narrative, referencing a final version. It shows intent, premeditation." He took a photo of it with his phone. "We can definitely use this." We started brainstorming how to present the evidence. A simple announcement wouldn't be enough. It needed to be undeniable, irrefutable. "A video," Ezra said, his fingers flying across his laptop. "We can intersperse clips of the audio recording with screenshots of Caitlin's GoFundMe posts, the lavish spending, this note about Peterson's final version. Visual and auditory. A full sensory assault of their bullshit. My physical therapy sessions became my training ground. The pain from the incision, the exhaustion, I channeled it all. Every leg lift, every careful stretch was fueled by a burning anger. This is for my career, I'd think, pushing through the discomfort. This is for my health. This is for every single person they scammed. My resolve hardened with each passing day. The party was less than 3 weeks away. The clock was ticking. One evening, Dad found me staring out the window, lost in thought. He cleared his throat. "Hope," he began, his voice unusually hesitant. "About this party. It's getting rather big, isn't it?" I turned, my expression unreadable. "Mum seems to think bigger is better." "Yes, well, your mother," he trailed off, then looked directly at me, his eyes troubled. "Maybe it's too much. For Caitlin, you know, with her recovery. And for you. All that attention." I just stared at him. Was this it? Was he cracking? Was he trying to warn me off, or was he genuinely concerned the whole thing was spiralling out of control and their lies were about to catch up with them? "I'm sure we'll all manage, Dad," I said, my voice cool and distant. His distress, whether real or feigned, meant nothing to me now. The stage was almost set, and the show, I vowed, would be unforgettable. "Manage? Yes, I suppose we will," Dad mumbled, turning away from my cool dismissal of his supposed concern. He didn't bring it up again. But my quiet intensity, my lack of participation in the party fervour, hadn't gone unnoticed by Mom and Caitlin. Subtly at first, then, with increasing frequency, they began their campaign. I overheard Mom on the phone with Aunt Carol. "Oh, Hope's... Well, you know, the surgery was a lot for her. She's been very withdrawn, a bit fragile, if you understand. We're worried, of course." Fragile? I was a goddamn steel trap, waiting to spring. Caitlin played her part too. "Hope seems so down all the time," she'd sigh to anyone who would listen, usually within my earshot. "I feel so guilty that my illness has affected her like this. The doctors did warn us about potential post-operative depression. They were trying to discredit me before I even had a chance to speak, painting me as unstable, unreliable. If I did try to say anything, who would believe the depressed, fragile sister over the brave, recovering one and her doting parents? It was a clever, insidious tactic. One afternoon I came back from a particularly grueling physio session, my muscles screaming, my scar throbbing. My bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Nothing seemed overtly out of place, but there was a subtle shift, a wrongness. The books on my nightstand were stacked differently. The throw on my chair was folded, not draped as I'd left it. "Mom!" She'd been in here. "Tidying," she'd claim, if I asked. My heart hammered against my ribs. The external hard drive. It was hidden in an old shoebox at the back of my closet, under a pile of winter sweaters. I practically tore the closet apart. My fingers closed around the familiar cool metal. Relief washed over me, so potent it left me weak-kneed. It was still there. But the message was clear. They were suspicious. Not necessarily of a grand exposé, perhaps, but of something. My withdrawal, my quiet observation. It was making them uneasy. The pressure cooker was hissing. "They're onto you, or at least onto the idea that you're not playing along," Ezra said when I told him. We were in his cluttered apartment, the safest place to strategize. "This party is it, Hope. It's our one shot. We have to make it count." "I know," I said, rubbing my temples. The constant vigilance was exhausting. Ezra, bless his tech-savvy soul, was already working on the video compilation. He'd taken the raw audio of their confession and was meticulously layering it. "Okay, so here," he said, pointing to his screen, "when your mum talks about the GoFundMe donations, I'll overlay screenshots of their bank statements if we can get them, or at least pictures of Caitlin's shopping sprees. And here, where your dad mentions the faked letters, I'll put up that note you found, the one about Peterson's final version. It needs to be undeniable," I repeated the words a mantra. "It will be," Ezra promised, his expression grimly determined. "By the time this video is done, no one will be able to look at them the same way again." The gaslighting attempts continued. Hope, Darling, are you sure you're up to attending the party? Mom asked one evening, her voice dripping with faux concern. It's going to be a long night. Perhaps you should rest. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Mom, I said, forcing a small, tight smile. I need to be there to support Caitlin. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Of course, dear. A few days before the party, Caitlin wandered into my room while I was on my laptop, supposedly researching gentle yoga routines for post-op recovery. In reality, I was triple-checking the evidence files Ezra and I had compiled. I minimized the window quickly, but not before she'd leaned over my shoulder. "What you working on?" she asked, popping a grape into her mouth. My heart leaped into my throat. On the desktop, still visible for a split second before I clicked away, was a folder innocuously named Caitlin's Journey. It contained all our damning files. "Oh, just some old photos and videos of you," I improvised, my mind racing. "For your recovery slideshow. Thought I might have some cute baby pics you could use." Caitlin's eyes lit up. "Ooh, good idea. Let me see." "Not yet," I said, forcing a casual laugh. "I want it to be a surprise. Just some embarrassing ones, you know." She pouted playfully. "Fine, but make sure I look good." She flounced out of the room, seemingly satisfied. I let out a shaky breath. That was too close. Had she seen enough to be truly suspicious? Enough to warn Mom? The folder name was generic, but if she'd glimpsed any of the file names within it... confessionaudio.mp3, GoFundMe, discrepancies.docx, faked letters, evidence, JPG. The thought sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. We were so close. I couldn't let them derail this now. The final week before the party was a surreal blur. I moved through the days like an automaton, a polite smile plastered on my face, an inferno of resentment raging beneath the surface. I helped Mom arrange flowers. No hope. The white roses go here, for purity and gratitude. And listened to Caitlin practice her tearful thank you speech in her bedroom, her voice echoing with false emotion. Each act of feigned normalcy was a twist of the knife, but also a necessary camouflage. They needed to believe I was still their docile, heartbroken, but ultimately supportive hope. "You seem much more like your old self lately, dear," Mom commented one afternoon, as I helped her fold napkins into elaborate fan shapes. "Just trying to focus on the positives," I said, my voice even. "Caitlin's health is what matters." She beamed. "Exactly. I knew you'd come around." Ezra and I were in constant clandestine communication. He'd finalised the video. It was brutal. The audio of their laughter, their callous dismissal of my sacrifice, their gleeful plotting. It was all there, interwoven with damning visuals. Screenshots of Caitlin's extravagant purchases made just days after large GoFundMe deposits. The scanned image of Dad's note about Peterson's final version. Close-ups of the GoFundMe page with its ever-increasing total, juxtaposed with headlines about my selfless act. "The projector for Caitlin's slideshow," Ezra confirmed via encrypted text. "It's a high-end model, HDMI input. I've got a microconverter for my laptop. We'll switch the input at the last second. I'll be near the AV table pretending to offer tech support." "And the remote trigger," I texted back. "Tested and ready. You give the signal. I hit play. Boom." My heart hammered. Boom, indeed. I also reached out to Andres Wallace, the journalist. I sent him a cryptic email from a burner account. "Regarding Caitlin's miraculous recovery, there's more to the story, much more. Evidence will be provided at the party. Be ready." I attached no specifics, just enough to pique his journalistic curiosity to ensure he was paying close attention. I also drafted a press kit, a USB drive containing the audio file, copies of the evidence, and concise, bullet-pointed summaries. This would be for him after the main event. Then I did something that felt both risky and necessary. I contacted a few of the people who had made substantial donations to the GoFundMe, people whose names Mom had proudly dropped. I chose individuals who lived out of town, who wouldn't be at the party, minimizing the risk of them tipping off my family. I was vague, telling them I had uncovered some disturbing irregularities regarding the fund and my sister's illness, and that I would be revealing the truth soon. I asked if, should my information prove credible, they would be willing to provide a statement about how they were misled. The responses were cautious but intrigued. A few agreed. Their words, their sense of betrayal, would add another layer to the fallout. My cousin, Willow, who lived a few states over, had always been the sanest member of our extended family. She'd sent a polite get-well-soon card for Caitlin, but hadn't donated, her scepticism a quiet hum in the background of my family's dramatics. I sent her a message. Big things happening at Caitlin's party. You might want to keep an eye on social media that night. Her reply was swift. Figured something was up. You okay, Hope? Seriously. Getting there? I typed back. Her simple, genuine concern was a balm. The night before the party, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror. My reflection stared back. A stranger I almost didn't recognize. The scar on my abdomen, usually hidden, was a pale, puckered line against my skin. It no longer felt like a badge of honor, a symbol of sisterly love. It felt like a brand, a mark of their deception. My eyes, though, held a new light, not the soft glow of the aspiring dancer, but the hard, determined glint of a woman on a mission. Exhaustion was etched into the lines around my mouth, but beneath it there was a terrifying, exhilarating resolve. There was no fear left, only a cold, clear purpose. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what they had stolen from me, my health, my career, my trust, my very identity. Morning dawned, bright and sunny, perfect party weather. As I came downstairs, Mom intercepted me in the hallway. She pulled me into a tight, cloying hug, her perfume overwhelming. "I'm so glad you're finally coming around, dear," she whispered, her voice saccharine sweet against my ear. "We were all so worried about you for a while there. It's wonderful to see you smiling again." She pulled back, her eyes scanning my face, a small, satisfied smile on her own. The condescension, the utter lack of awareness of the storm about to break over her head, was almost comical. It was the final drop of fuel on the pyre of my rage. "Wouldn't miss it, Mom," I said, my own smile feeling like a rictus. "It's going to be a day to remember." Oh, yes, it certainly was. The garden was a sea of pastel fabrics and polite laughter. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and tiny, elaborate canapes. Mum, resplendent in a flowing floral dress, greeted guests with air kisses and pronouncements of Caitlin's miraculous strength. Dad stood beside her, beaming, shaking hands, playing the proud patriarch. And Caitlin, oh, Caitlin was the star. Dressed in virginal white, her hair artfully tousled, she moved through the crowd, accepting compliments and sympathetic murmurs with a practiced humility that made my stomach clench. Andres Wallace and his cameraman were already there, his microphone periodically aimed at Caitlin as she recounted, yet again, her harrowing ordeal. I found Ezra near the large projector screen set up at one end of the marquee. He was fiddling with some cables, looking like an official event technician. He gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. My heart was a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I clutched the small remote trigger in my pocket, its plastic cool against my clammy palm. "And now," Mom trilled into a microphone, her voice echoing slightly, "the moment we've all been waiting for. Our brave warrior, our miracle girl, Caitlin, would like to say a few words and share a little something with you all." A wave of applause. Caitlin glided towards the small, flower-decked podium, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked out at the crowd, her lower lip trembling prettily. "Oh, my goodness," she began, her voice thick with emotion. I hardly know where to start. Seeing all your wonderful faces here today, It just means the world to me." She paused for effect, sniffling delicately. "This journey, it's been the hardest thing I've ever faced. There were days I didn't think I'd make it." More sympathetic murmurs. I saw Mrs. Henderson, who'd donated $5,000, dabbing her own eyes. "But through it all," Caitlin continued, her voice gaining strength, "I had my amazing family, my incredible parents." She gestured to Mom and Dad, who preened, "and of course, my selfless, heroic sister, Hope." Her gaze found mine, and she offered a watery, beatific smile. "Hope, you gave me life. You gave me a second chance. I will never, ever be able to repay you." The irony was a bitter pill. I just stared back, my expression unreadable. "And now," Caitlin announced, beaming, "I'd like to share a little slideshow with you all. A few moments from my battle and my journey back to health." She nodded towards the AV table. "If we could dim the lights, please." The marquee lights softened. The projector whirred. This was it. My thumb hovered over the button on the remote. Caitlin turned expectantly towards the screen. "Here are just a few memories." I pressed the button. The screen flickered. But instead of smiling photos of Caitlin in a hospital bed, the first image that flashed up was a stark black screen with white text, "The truth about Caitlin's journey." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Caitlin frowned, turning to look at the tech table. That's not..." Then the audio started. My voice, distorted slightly by the recording, but clear. "Bless her naive heart, she bought the whole thing, hook, line and sinker. Poor selfless Hope, giving up her precious dancing career for little old me." Caitlin's triumphant cackling laughter filled the marquee. A collective gasp went through the crowd. I saw Caitlin's face drain of all colour. Her eyes, wide with dawning horror, darted from the screen to me, then to Mom and Dad. Mom's voice, crisp and businesslike, filled the sudden, stunned silence. "Another 5,000 just came in this morning from the GoFundMe." Dad's chuckle. "People are so gullible. It's almost too easy." The screen changed, showing screenshots of the GoFundMe page. The total climbing, juxtaposed with photos Caitlin had posted of new designer bags. A luxury spa day. More gasps. Someone near the front whispered, "Oh my God!" Caitlin's voice again, smug and cruel. "That new convertible I'm getting with my share of the donations." The faces of my family were masks of abject horror. Mum's perfectly made-up face was contorted in disbelief, then fury. Dad looked like he was about to be physically sick. Caitlin just stood there, frozen, her mouth agape. Mom lunged. "Stop it! Stop that right now!" she shrieked, scrambling towards the projector, but a couple of guests, their faces grim, moved to block her path. It was too late. The audio continued, relentless, Dad's voice discussing the faked hospital letters. Mum's dismissive comment about my dancing career. Caitlin's assertion that I wasn't really going to make it big anyway. Chaos erupted. People were shouting, "Scammers! Liars!" Mrs. Henderson was openly weeping, her face a mask of betrayal. Andres Wallace's camera was swiveling, capturing every horrified face, every damning second. My parents and Caitlin were trapped, exposed, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them in real time, under the glare of their own spotlight. I stood a little straighter, the remote still in my hand, watching the inferno I had ignited. A grim, terrible satisfaction washed over me, cold and clean. Amidst the cacophony, Mom's voice, raw and filled with venom, cut through the noise. She pointed a trembling finger directly at me. You'll pay for this, Hope. You've destroyed this family." As if on cue, the distant, unmistakable wail of police sirens grew louder, closer. Someone must have called them. Justice, it seemed, was already on its way. The arrival of the police turned the chaotic party into a full-blown crime scene. Flashing blue and red lights strobed across the panicked faces in the marquee, painting grotesque shadows on the pristine white fabric. Mum was still screaming, a torrent of abuse aimed at me, at the guests, at the police officers who were now calmly trying to restore order. Dad just stood there, shoulders slumped, his face ashen, looking like a broken mannequin. Caitlin had collapsed into a weeping heap on the grass, her white dress stained, her miracle recovery a forgotten charade. "Mum, if you could please calm down," a policewoman said to Mom, her voice firm but patient. "Calm down," Mom shrieked. "She fabricated evidence. She's trying to destroy us." "We have multiple witnesses and a rather compelling video, Ma'am," the officer replied, gesturing towards Andres Wallace, who was still filming, now with a detective by his side. I handed over the USB drive with the press kit to Andres, who nodded, his expression a mixture of shock and journalistic fervour. The next few days were a whirlwind of police interviews, legal consultations, and media frenzy. Andres's exposé, featuring snippets of my video and interviews with distraught donors, went viral. It was picked up by national news outlets. The story of the kidney scam family was everywhere. My family's carefully curated image was not just shattered, it was obliterated, replaced by one of greed, manipulation, and breathtaking cruelty. Arrests followed swiftly. Mom, Dad, and Caitlin were charged with multiple counts of fraud. The GoFundMe account was frozen, and authorities began the arduous process of trying to claw back the hundreds of thousands of dollars they'd swindled. Their assets were seized. The Lake Cottage dream evaporated. The new convertible was repossessed before Caitlin even got to drive it off the lot. I cooperated fully with the investigation, providing my recording, the documents I'd found, and a detailed statement. It was draining, reliving the betrayal over and over, but necessary. Ezra was a rock, accompanying me to meetings, deflecting intrusive media calls. Willow flew in, offering quiet support and a much-needed sense of normalcy amidst the madness. "Always knew they were a piece of work," she said, shaking her head as we watched another news report detailing their arraignment. "But this is next level." The public reaction was, as expected, intense. Overwhelmingly, people were supportive of me, horrified by what my family had done. Messages poured in. From strangers, from other victims of similar scams, from people who understood the depth of such a profound betrayal. There were, of course, a few whispers online, comments under articles suggesting I was too harsh, that I should have handled it privately. Privately, like they'd handled my kidney donation. Those voices were drowned out by the chorus of outrage against my family. There was an undeniable emptiness in the days that followed the party, once the adrenaline faded. The fire of revenge had burned so brightly, and now, with my family facing the full consequences of their actions, there was a void. The family unit, as I had known it, was gone, destroyed, and I had been the one to light the match. There was a cost to that, a finality in severing those ties, even ties that had become so toxic. No more Christmases, no more birthdays, no more shared history, however tainted, just nothing. Some of the recovered GoFundMe money, after a lengthy legal process, was directed towards my outstanding medical bills. The court recognised me as a direct victim of their fraud concerning my care. It felt strange using their ill-gotten gains for my legitimate needs. I donated a significant portion of what was left to actual kidney disease charities and research foundations, a small attempt to rebalance the scales. My career as a professional dancer was unequivocally over. The physical toll of the nephrectomy, compounded by the emotional trauma, made a return to that demanding world impossible. But as one door closed, another, unexpectedly, began to creak open. I started writing, at first just journaling, trying to process the maelstrom of emotions. Then, encouraged by Ezra and Willow, I began to write my story, not just for myself, but for others. Finding my voice, a new way to express the complexities of what I'd endured. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection and my gaze would drift to the faint line of my scar. It was no longer a symbol of a naive sacrifice for a monstrous lie. It was a battle wound, a reminder of the day I stopped being a victim and took back control of my life, my narrative. The future was still uncertain, a vast, unwritten page. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, it was mine to shape, free from their suffocating shadow. Karma, I reflected, had a funny way of circling back. It might take its time, it might travel a winding path, but eventually it always found its mark. And in the quiet aftermath of the storm, there was a strange, unexpected peace. The peace of justice served, and a new dawn breaking.